Chapter 3. Flash is right.
There's something super.
I didn't say it. Yes, my
Tryna get out of my city, tryna do it different so my people can't forget me. I wanna be successful, I wanna make an impact. Know that I am different, I know that you feel that. Look me in the eyes and tell me what you see.
Kano wins. Flawless victory fatality.
Hello, I'm Biz,
And I'm Cass,
and we're here to tell you about So High, the 420 show.
where we educate and advocate for the cannabis culture right here on Venue Media.
We are available on all major digital show outlets, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and SoundCloud.
And you can catch us on Instagram at The So High Show.
Finally, I didn't fuck it up.
Sorry.
3.
Trade show displays, step and repeat backdrops, pull-up banner stands, table throws, all your large printing needs. Call Display J at 301-378-9363. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
DisplayJ.com.
Do you like pastors that turn into raptors? Kung Fu cops who fight Hitler? Piranha? Condas? Me too. Hi, I'm Kyle T. Reyes of Kyle Reyes Comics, and my love of all things absurd and weird has driven me to create my own comic book, Primal Instinct, the epic dinosaurs in space saga that dares to ask the question, do dinosaurs belong in space? You're goddamn right they do. Well, for my next venture, I've decided to launch the Ridiculous Podcast, a weekly show showcasing the weird, insane, crazy, absurd, ridiculous that pop culture has to offer. Join me as we discuss the weird that makes the weird look vanilla. Let's get ridiculous. I know.
Looking like the jacked up TV from your mom's basement. That's right, the time and the place is now. The Hub Show is returning. Once again, we are back, my friends. I will be one of your new hosts. I am Corey Bush, professional wrestler, comedian, actor, and self-professed local celebrity. I'm here with Chris Canfield. Chris Canfield phoning it in, but we're going to be back. with the new news, hot topics, and fun things that are going to make this show pop, snap, crackle, and bang all the way into the evenings. Check us out on Wednesday nights, the new Hub Show coming back soon.
This is the podcast pit, brought to you by Venue Media.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that special time of the week. It is time to talk some wrestling. This is the Podcast Pit. I am your host, former professional wrestler, promoter of Voltage Wrestling, jack of all trades, master of what? I do not know. Mike Raddick. I'm alongside my broadcast partner, Rennis the Menace Carbaugh. How you doing, Rennis?
I'm doing great, Mike. How you doing?
Not too bad. Before we get started, this is a fan-supported and listener-supported show, supported by people just like you. We do it each and every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. You can get it here live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast at. We are brought to you by the good folks at DisplayJ.com. I'm not hearing anything, Jay. There we go.
I'm hearing everything great.
DisplayJ.com, your one-stop shop for all of your large signage, trade show signs, all of your needs. Ladies and gentlemen of wrestling, especially you in the wrestling business, shows are coming back here very soon. Sooner than you think. You want to be ready to stand out from the crowd. Unfortunately for you, the good people at DisplayJ can help you do this. The backdrop behind you.
Yep.
The backdrop behind you right here. DisplayJ. DisplayJ.com. That's where you need to go.
Then we're also brought to you by the good people at Liquor Locker on Dual Highway. Folks, I put these people over every day.
Yes.
They have finally gotten the one thing I've been looking for. So I'm a big fan of Barstool Sports. Got my Viva La Stool sticker on my water bottle here. But with Barstool Sports and Ryan Whitney partnered with New Amsterdam Vodka. And they have, it's called Pink Whitney. It is pink lemonade flavored vodka. One of the hottest things on the internet right now. But they finally have the hockey sticks.
The hockey sticks.
With the Pink Whitney minis in them. 10 Pink Whitney minis, and they have them at the Liquor
hell
Locker.
You say?
I've been looking for this since they came.
You are scary happy about this right now.
I'm probably going to leave here, go to the Liquor Locker, and get one myself.
Now, the best thing about the Liquor Locker for me? You can buy stuff online and just go pick it up there in the store.
Right. You don't have to waste time.
You don't have to waste time. You don't have to go inside. Like, you just go pick it up, and it's there.
Yeah, reasonable prices. They got cigars, liquor, beer, anything you can imagine.
You know how much I hate waiting in lines? And they just cut they cut that out for you. It's awesome. Liquor Locker, Hagerstown, Dole Highway. Get there.
All right, folks. So we've got a lot happening this week.
We got a little bit of wrestling news before we get on to our big interview. We got an interview with Shane Shadows coming up with you here shortly. But we're going to go ahead with some wrestling news. And I know, Rennis, you got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I do. So there were two big signings this week. Well, technically three. But so WWE signed, it is now coming out like 30-some people.
Yeah.
It's the largest developmental class they've had. We talked about it last week. People like Eli Drake, a.k.a. now known as L.A. Knight, and Taya Valkyrie, but there's like 30 people. They've only announced, I think, 15.
I'm real excited about the Eli Drake thing, as I said last week. Hagerstown boy, you gotta love it. We got Chance Young in here in the chat. Sorry, Chance, you're gonna have to get your boy Andy Weinberg. You're gonna have to get your boy Andy Weinberg to sign on to all of this. I'm waiting. We ain't seen old Weinberg in a bit, but get him back in the chat.
The other big signings EC3 has signed with Ring of Honor. Big get for them.
That's a very big get for them. EC3, a premier athlete, a guy that I don't think has gotten his just due. Didn't get in WWE.
No.
Got pushed to the moon in Impact, but now we are where. Now he is back in the Ellis Island of professional wrestling, and this is where careers get. This is where careers get back on track. People get discovered, and careers take off. It's
Right.
Ring of Honor. This is what Ring of Honor is known for. I'm really excited to hear about this.
And the one you weren't as excited about, but it's a big shock for a lot of people, and that's because Paul White, a.k.a. The Big Show, a.k.a. Captain Insano.
He shows no mercy.
He shows no mercy.
It's not that I wasn't excited about it. I don't think it's the big get that everybody thinks it's going to be because he's an announcer, and that's please don't think that that's disrespect to Paul White or Big Show's career at all. Like, this is one of the best big men in the history of the business. However, like in that announcer role, I don't think it's as big as a get as everybody's saying, but still from a name standpoint, it's huge.
Right. So he has gone to AEW. I think the biggest thing that he's going to bring to the table, maybe besides the announcing of the wrestling, is his knowledge.
Yeah.
He is going to be able to work with people like Will Hobbs, who is a big man.
Yes.
Brian Stark, big man. Lance, it's going to be it's good for them to have that. They don't have someone who's a big man.
You got a man with over 25 years experience and a lot of knowledge.
Exactly.
Now, I don't want to because I want to get through this stuff here so we can get to our interview. But the big thing this week, The Miz
cashes in
Money in the Bank, wins the championship, and it's been polarizing to say the least.
Right. I love it. I love The Miz. I think he is one of the most underrated, underutilized workers in the business. I know you don't like The Miz.
It's here's the thing with The Miz. It's not that I don't like The Miz, but as WWE champion, I don't think he is at that level. And I will say this.
Wrong.
Well, you can say I'm wrong all you want, but I've never seen a match out of The Miz where I'm just like, man, that was a classic. Like, I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life. Like, it's a lot of he's very, very good on the he's very, very good with interviews. He is very, very good. He's very good to have at the top of the card because obviously the guy's got star power. There's no denying that.
Right.
However, just personally for me, I think his style is a little soft in the ring.
Go back and watch the Talking Smack beatdown he gave to Daniel Bryan.
Oh, well.
And everything he says is true. There's a reason he's not going out there and throwing himself around.
Yeah, but,
zero injury.
Well,
zero takeoff.
Jeff Jarrett's the same way. And, we all see how everybody widely regards his career. I'm just saying.
I don't widely regard his career at all. I think he is overhyped. I think I'm not a big Jeff Jarrett fan.
Well, yeah, but it's literally the same style of wrestler. I get that whole, I can go out there and do this every night. I get that. But at some point in time, you've got to set that aside and, really have that career-defining match to kind of stand out. You've got to have that career-defining match.
He's got career longevity. Some of these people that you're talking about that have these career-defining matches do not have longevity.
Yeah, guess what? You want to know what they have? You want to know what they have? Money, and they're easily first ballot. They have The Miz.
I think you don't give the credit for The Miz. I think you are biased when it comes to
as David Rep says here in the chat, I will agree it is good for business right now. I will agree with that 150%. It's good for business.
And the problem is my issue is he's going to lose that fast lane.
Well, probably.
I think he's going to
lose it to a more than capable Bobby Lashley.
See, Bobby Lashley, while he can go in the ring, put him on a mic and he falters.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Bobby Lashley's having the best run of his career, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you don't have Brock Lesnar, the next guy that you have that looks like he can beat the dog shit out of anybody is Bobby Lashley.
I'm not saying he's not talented in the ring. I think he's very talented in the ring. I think he's got charisma. I think he lacks on the mic.
Okay.
And
Andrew Gordon, good point. Perfect for the Peacock official launch. The dude must have. Let me read all of this. A diet of virgin.
He doesn't.
Oh my God! It's going to be one of those this morning, huh?
Andrew, I think you're right to a point. You said you're not a fan of his style. But his style is safe.
It's my opinion. It's just my opinion. I know everybody doesn't have the same opinion.
But then you go.
That's okay.
But then you talk about Sasha Banks and how you don't like her style because she's throwing herself around. You can't have it both ways. Brother.
No, you can't. You can't. I will give you that. I will give you that. However, what else we got here?
We got all right. So, kind of an interesting one. Several WWE trademarks were denied this week because they didn't have the
permission from
the wrestler. Smart,
very smart.
One
move.
of the biggest one is Dominic Mysterio.
Yeah,
I can guarantee Ray was like, no, because if you leave, that was the cool thing about Ray. He took his name with him and was able to work.
Well, he had his name before. I mean, there was no way they were getting that trademark on Rey Mysterio because he could prove that he had a name before coming in.
No.
Dominic Mysterio, a little bit more of a thing, but I'm glad he denied. Like, people need to start standing up for their trademarks and keeping their names and stuff. Like, I can understand if WWE created your gimmick, but if you're coming in as a son of a wrestler, Dominic Mysterio, you should be able to keep that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
So, AEW, we're going to blow through these. So, AEW versus NXT. NXT, good numbers, 700 and some thousand. AEW got a slight bump there in the 800,000s. Both shows were excellent this week.
Phenomenal wrestling out of both shows.
You've got Karrion Kross winning the title. And, I mean, that dude is money. He is so good. He's scary. He's got an incredible mouthpiece with Scarlett Bordeaux, who is also an incredible wrestler. Those two are going to... I mean, they're great. On the NXT or the AEW side, big news coming out of there is, so Sting actually wrestled this week. And interestingly enough, he has been fully cleared to wrestle.
Well then.
Fully cleared. Now, I don't expect a lot of wrestling. The dude's in his 50s, I think. But.
Fully cleared.
Yeah.
How much, like, I mean, like, I'll say this because WWE was, like, very, very hesitant on putting him back in the ring. Sometimes I agree, some of these guys shouldn't be back in the ring. How much do you think it's about Vince McMahon closing careers?
I think his ideas, I think with especially Sting being a WCW guy, they buried him in both matches, that big marquee matches they had, and he probably got... the WWE doctors, you have to go to our doctor. They probably told him.
CM Punk said a bunch of, spoke so highly of those guys. So, and, turns out, people could say CM Punk whined and complained a bunch, but turns out he was actually right.
Yeah.
He
might not have done
a court of law said it.
He might not have gone about it the right way, but, but he was right. He was 100% right. AEW Revolution is next Sunday. I believe we're going to be watching it. Kyle's going to be watching it.
Yep. We got the whole crew in here. We're going to be watching AEW Revolution. We're going to be live tweeting this thing too. I'm sure we will be.
Oh yeah. It's going to be a great. It's going to be great. Speaking of AEW Revolution, one of the big matches there is the exploding barbed wire match with Jon Moxley. Yesterday, I guess it would have been yesterday, Jon Moxley retained his IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship over Kenta.
Oh.
He retained it.
All right.
Which I think is good. I think that's going to be...
Yeah, no, that's a good way to start things off. I mean, there's more to that story than... there's going to be a lot more to that story. Down the pike, so to speak. I really think they're building up to some big live event when fans are allowed to come back at 100%, which is great for pro wrestling. It's great for AEW, great for the fans as well.
Right.
But moving on, what else we got, Kyle?
The last one I want to really talk about. So there are now 2 matches 100% set for WrestleMania. We saw the Edge versus Roman Reigns is happening.
Okay.
The other one that got set last night is one I am excited for, is the Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks match.
Oh,
I'm sorry, but
that's a good one. I'll be honest with you. Bianca Belair has improved tenfold over the last year.
Right.
Great talent in the ring, and especially going up against Sasha Banks, who is a great worker in her own right. I know I give her a lot of flack because there's people out there that think she's the greatest of all time, and she's not.
Right.
She's good. She's very good.
I have very differing opinions. No,
she's
Sasha
not.
Banks.
Yeah, no, she's very, very good. She's just not the greatest of all time. Sorry.
No, but
yeah.
No offense. I don't think there is a greatest women's wrestler of all time. I think there's a Mount Rushmore of women's wrestlers. I don't.
She's not on the Mount Rushmore.
Bullshit. I will call you on that.
No, because I can tell you the Mount Rushmore right now. That would be Moolah,
No.
China. China's on there.
I'm not saying Moolah.
Trish Stratus is on there.
Okay.
And then that last one's got to be Charlotte Flair.
I don't find Moolah to be on that.
Yeah. Well, no, Moolah has to be on. Like, there's not even a question. I don't even like the Fabulous Moolah. I don't like. I've never seen a match of hers that I've liked. She has to be on the Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling.
Why?
A 25-year champion. Sorry.
In a time where there weren't.
Bro, you're not going to win that argument with me.
In a time where women's wrestling wasn't as athletic, it wasn't as pushed, it wasn't.
That's great. Still, I mean, she was the one building the road. Sorry,
she's also the one pimping women out. Sorry,
hey,
but if we're gonna talk about, we're gonna. I
want to say this: Ty Cobb was a terrible human being, and he's still in the Hall of Fame and still one of the greatest baseball players of all time.
We're not talking baseball. We're talking wrestling.
I know
People
we're talking
get canceled
wrestling.
in wrestling for way less, but because she's the Fabulous Moolah, 25 years, it doesn't matter. Bullshit. She does not deserve to be on the exactly. David.
David says he did, and hey, to each their own on that. I'm just going historically speaking. That's like one of the women. You can't talk about women's wrestling without talking.
I totally
about her.
agree, but I don't think she's one of the greatest of all time anymore.
No, I mean
she's not on a Mount Rushmore.
She's got to be on the Mount. She has to be on the Mount Rushmore of okay.
She can be on a list. She can be on a short list. She can be in a top 10. She is not. Who?
And the only if she's not Wendy Richter.
I could get behind that more than I could get behind
Brian
Fabulous
Carball.
Moolah.
The kid is wrong.
You can say you're wrong. I'm wrong all we want, Dad. I'm sorry. Fabulous Moolah does not deserve to be on that anymore.
All right, we're going to have that argument for another day.
Yeah.
However, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special interview this week. I was fortunate enough to sit down last Sunday with Shane Shadows, the owner of CPW Wrestling. We kind of got to talk about the creation of CPW Wrestling, basically what led him to creating CPW, the challenges of being a promoter right out of the gate. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an interview you do want to listen to this afternoon, or this morning, I should say. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and bring you Shane Shadows, the creation of CPW. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here back at the podcast pit, and I've got a special guest with us this week. This is a fixture of area wrestling for the last 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the owner of CPW and one of the top wrestlers in this area. If you've been watching for the last 25, 30 years, the one and only Shane Shadows. How you doing, Shane?
Thank you, Mike, for having me here. I'm doing great. It's my pleasure. Appreciate the invite to come down here this morning and get an opportunity to tell my story.
Absolutely. It's been an act of Congress to get you down here. I know your schedule is super busy, as is mine. So
always.
It's like I'm glad our schedules coordinated together here today. We could finally get you in the studio. We could talk some wrestling and talk about the creating a wrestling promotion.
Sure.
You've created a wrestling promotion. I've created a wrestling promotion, and this is going to be a great one because we both are night and day on our
diametrically opposed philosophy.
Yes, metrically opposed philosophy. So this is going to be a good one. This is today. But ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about creating a wrestling promotion. Shane Shadows did this. He did this many, many years ago, 1997. I shouldn't even say it as many years ago. That's like my childhood. We're all showing our age here, I guess. But
that's okay. I'm no spring chicken. They used to call me Sexy Shane. that ship sailed.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
that ship sailed.
But, ladies and gentlemen, nonetheless, we're going to sit here and talk about creating a promotion. 1997 was a different world than when I started mine in 2007. And that's we're 10 years apart here, and we're going to talk about how the difference is creating a wrestling promotion in two different eras. So Shane, you started your promotion in '97. I want to say the top of the wrestling world at that point in time. You had the Bret Hart. We were doing the U.S. versus Canada angle on WWF.
Right.
The NWO was running hot. And
sure.
Here in the Hagerstown area, we had something starting to bubble there with Neil Superior's Professional Wrestling School, and I want to talk to you about how you started there and what led to you creating CPW.
Well, I was one of Neil's first students back in November of '92. Me and Doug Delicious were the first two guys through the door, and had my first pro wrestling match in January of '93, and what I kind of ended up doing more than anything else was, beyond just getting into the ring and taking bumps, I started to learn like the quote unquote political aspects,
Yes.
how to handle talent, how to talk to guys, who to call, what to do, how to go about handling yourself when you were talking with even guys way above your level. Like, say, for example, if Neil had to go into the shower and talk to Jimmy Snuka about a match with, Nikolai Volkov or whatever, and how he wanted it to play out, I was kind of a couple steps away or within earshot so I could hear how he did it. So I learned literally from the ground up how to be involved in wrestling. It's probably the best way to put it. How to set up the ring, how to get into the ring, how to take the bumps, how to work the matches, how to call promoters, how to talk to talents, how to book cards. But I had been doing that since I was a little kid. I started watching when I was 8 years old. And after I got done watching the different various TV shows every weekend, I would go and take a sheet of paper and I would just sit down at my desk in my bedroom or whatnot, and I would not only write down the matches like, hey, it's the Boston Garden, and list it the whole way down. World Championship match, Bob Backlund, 245, Princeton, Minnesota versus Superstar Graham, Paradise, the whole way down the card. So I kind of taught myself from what I had seen from programs and from television how to format a live wrestling event. So, and it wasn't probably less than a year I was involved down here at the wrestling school that Neil had me booking the undercard stuff. Not, I wasn't calling the main guys who were coming in from out of town, but we had 10 or 12 guys hanging around the wrestling school and stuff. We tried to find a match for all of them, and it was kind of bestowed upon me, which I loved it. Here we'll put it. This will be a 6-man tag here, and these two guys will work this one here, and then we'll do this. So I learned how to match up people, how to put matches together, and so forth like that. So by the time that 97 rolled around, after Neil had passed away, which had changed so much, I had a pretty good handle on it and felt like I was ready to take over the school permanently. I was handling a lot of the in-ring training and so forth for Neil at that time as well, mainly because he had a job down the road that took away a lot of his time. So I felt like I was ready when he had passed, and then of course plans changed. I don't know if you want me just to keep going about that.
Please keep going, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
And plans changed, and Dick Kirchhoff, Neil's dad and the promoter, said he was bringing John Rambo back from Portland. He was from Bensalem or Philadelphia or
Bethlehem. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he was moving back after a run out there in the Northwest working around. And the way it was presented to me was that we were going to be partners, but
didn't end up that way, did it?
No, it ended up that way for about a half a week. And then they asked me to go.
I can only imagine, because I know how volatile of a personality he can be at times, and like I know you are a no BS guy. You are just those two elements put into kind of one project that's going to lead to a volatile situation. Yeah,
I think the biggest difference between us is that he's very reactionary, and I'm not going to take a lot, but I think I'd like to think that I'm easier to talk to and more approachable, but I think we probably both share that similar personality trait, like that alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both are type A personalities. It's just different type A personalities.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Type A plus and type A negative.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So, break down here, because I know shortly after he arrives, your departure from the NWL happens.
Pretty much immediate. I said, within we did a Saturday night show in Kaiser, West Virginia. We were both on it. We both did steel cage matches that night, not with each other, but me and Switchblade tag team and took on the Grungers, and Rambo took on Bob Starr. And in our match, the tag team match was first, and we did everything under the sun, which we were just trying to prove a point, and I think that pissed him off.
Yeah,
because I think John's a good worker in his own way, but John's not going to I mean, and we were all young.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't 25 years old yet, so I was still taking the big bumps and doing the big dives and all the crazy stuff that I later, became the anti-version of.
I was about to say.
Once I figured it all out, but he didn't like that. We met the following day at the wrestling school and had like an hour-long meeting with each other, and I kind of came out of that feeling like he was trying to big league me, like he was trying to put over what a star he was, and I knew that wasn't really the case. And that's not knocking him as a worker or as a performer. Just he was trying to convince me that he was.
Yeah, not at all. But I mean, that's something that was a theme there for a long time after that.
Yeah.
And like I get it.
Living.
No, I mean I like now looking back at it, I totally get why that was the case. However, at the time, I mean, you're sitting there watching this, like, this guy thinks he's God, like. But
and I'm asking him questions about stuff that he doesn't think that I even have any knowledge.
So you're kind of putting him on the spot then.
Yeah, I'm kind of putting him on the spot, asking him about stuff that he didn't think that I probably had any knowledge of, and then we were doing training on Tuesdays and Thursdays back then, and he showed up Tuesday, and got into the ring and worked out a little bit, and on Thursday he didn't show up. So I was thinking right away, I was like, well, here's my new, quote-unquote, new partner. Didn't even show up the second day that we're here. And then Saturday, I got a phone call from Dick Kirchhoff on my voicemail that he wanted me out of the wrestling school and Rambo was going to take it over.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of one of those things that I think that they were just trying to push me to see if I would quit. And once they saw I wasn't going to quit, he still needed to have me out. And again, looking back at it now at 49 years old versus 25 years old, I see that you can only have one guy at the top of the pyramid.
No, there can only be one guy at the top. And, I mean, this is a far stark contrast to hearing on the phone, hey, I think the WWF's going to snatch this guy up.
Yeah, I had heard that too. That was one of the things that Dick had told me when he first told me about this. He said, Shane, I don't think he'll be here but a couple months. He said, because I think WWF is going to snatch him right up. And my reply to Dick was, I said, Dick, I think they could probably just as easily snatch him out of Portland, Oregon as they could Hagerstown, Maryland.
I mean, yeah, because this is like early 1997. So they were desperately looking for talent up there because they were getting their asses kicked.
Yeah.
They're getting their asses kicked on television at the time. I mean, it was bad. If they wanted a talent, they could have easily snatched them up. The same with WCW. Like that, if somebody was wanted on television, that could have easily happened, no problem.
Absolutely.
In '97.
Absolutely, and who wouldn't have went? But I mean, but then the narrative later on became that he gave up a lucrative six-figure career just so he could help local kids and. Come on, I mean, John, we're on.
He's like El Generico helping those poor orphans in Mexico while he's disappeared from the.
We're on good terms after all these years, but I mean, what a crock of crap that.
No, now I can't say anything bad about John. He's I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he's never done anything really wrong to me.
We're all older now, and
I
think the aggression as you age, the aggression in you dies, and your feelings of being wronged or this or that, your justifications for feeling a certain way kind of fade because you start to see the bigger picture in life. But I always kind of rolled my eyes at that one. So he gave up his six-figure WWE career so he could train kids in the old Department of Motor Vehicles building in downtown Hagerstown.
I'm sorry. If you're giving up a six-figure career to come to Hagerstown,
you probably
all due respect to Hagerstown, sorry. I'm not doing it. I'm just not. But here we are. It's 1997. Shane Shadows is out on his ass right now. A lot of guys in this situation would have just packed up and went home.
Yeah.
You kind of wanted to, I'm sure there was some trepidation at first, but you went a different route.
I remember it very clearly. I was sitting at home and I called my dad, and I just said, this is just kind of, here's what happened, and now I'm out of this, and blah, 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 blah. And my dad, who was not a wrestling fan, and I don't ever know that he's ever been a particularly big fan of me being involved in wrestling, just kind of an old school kind of guy in terms of, you go to work, you work at the factory, you do this, you do that. And I remember him just saying, well, I'll back you. And I sat there for a second, and I kept starting to talk. And what'd you say?
Yeah.
I'll back you.
That's the exact same reaction I would have if my parents said that on
Yeah.
the phone to me after something like that.
I couldn't believe it, and I honestly couldn't believe it. The only thing that I really had was that I knew a lot of guys. I had wrestled around through Pennsylvania and some Virginia and West Virginia for a lot of independent promoters for, I guess at that point, 4 or 5 years almost, and I knew where I could get talent, but I thought that I was going to get most of my talent from here. But the one thing that I did have, and I guess the statute of limitations has run out, is that Neil used to have like a little metal index card holder.
Yes.
And when I left, I took all my stuff. I took the index card folder.
Oh, there you go.
Which provided me with a variety of different phone numbers and leads, and gave me the information that I kind of needed to be able to book.
So, I want to cut you off here because there's a lot of kids on here that are going to watch this program. They're going to be like, oh, index cards, like this whole thing. You got to remember there wasn't any internet, or the internet was in its infancy in 1997. Like there wasn't. You couldn't just go online and find people's contacts like you can today. Like you had to have stuff like this, and
it was a closed business.
Oh yeah,
it was still a very closed business.
And is it safe to say if it wouldn't have been for you taking that index card holder, there might not have been a CPW?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been.
Wow.
I could have made another phone call and maybe called this one or that one, but I'm just looking through the folder, and beyond the fact where my father's told me, hey, I'll do this with you. Now I got to get a building set up, and so I got the contact information for the lady who booked the Berkeley County Fairgrounds in Martinsburg. So I got that information. I got that set up. I contacted the guy who we were working for out of Winchester, which I think his name was Chris Tibbs. So I rented a ring. So these are all things I know I got to have.
Chris Tibbs, why does that name sound familiar?
He ran those shows out of the barn or the stockyards or whatever down there on 540.
There you go.
He was doing good business for a while.
That was the first building I ever attended an independent wrestling show.
Really? I mean, it was a
that
great
was in
place.
Winchester, Virginia, and it had the arena style seating.
It was like you came out of the cattle chute.
Yeah,
the ring was down in the pit.
My dad took me to 2 shows there. There was one with Big Slam Vader in the main event in a cage match, and I remember Julio De Niro, Jimmy Cicero, Black Hawk, and Switchblade.
I was there that night too.
Yeah, I remember those 4 being on the undercard, and then I remember the match with Chris Candido. And years later, I ended up finding out that it was you that was in that match.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, yes. that was. Yeah, he literally legitimately whacked me with the ring bell.
Oh,
you can hear it ding. I still have the match on tape. Maybe I'll get you a copy, or I'll do it on my other show.
The one thing I don't remember, this was This was
still 96.
Yeah, about late 96, early 97. But the one thing, was Tammy with him at ringside?
No.
No,
they were still using Tammy up north.
Yeah. I kind of figured.
Chris had that neck surgery, and they didn't really have much for him. So Chris was a great talent, but he was very small by their standards at that time.
All right.
So I got those things set up, and the next call, so now I got a building, I got a backer and a building and a ring. So I at least know that we could make this work. My next call's to Greg Valentine.
Wow. Yeah, this is very similar. This is very similar to like my first run in promoting.
Sure.
I remember, leaving a promotion because honestly, I was very upset because a situation different than yours. It was like more of, you're giving this promotion a lot of your time and your energy to try to help them, and they're giving you nothing in return. Nothing to better you, nothing to help you along in training, nothing to, basically no money in your pocket. Just there's nothing coming in return.
Right.
And I remember me and Mark Brown at a point where we were at a point where we were just look, we just need to go run our own show. Maybe we just do it once just to see how it goes. And finding a building was hard because we had
a lot of people don't want to touch it.
Well, a lot of people don't want to touch you, and then you had some people against you saying, hey, don't work with these guys, for the buildings that had already run wrestling. So
yeah, I mean, you come across that once in a while, but most of the time, sometimes people are cautious, this guy said he was going to do this, and we were going to make this kind of money, and we did, and it's because I think those people were talking out of turn.
Well, yeah,
there's just too. It's not easy to do.
It's not.
Any of this, because, I mean, you really legitimately have to understand that people, it used to be, like, even when I first started, you could put wrestling as a fundraiser at a high school for the band boosters or the athletic department. Because I saw this. My first weekend in wrestling, we went down to Only, Virginia, which is, you ever been to Only?
No.
Not many people haven't. It's about an hour south of Ocean City.
Okay.
It's like right along the shore. And they had established a relationship that I had ran some events there for years, and I've luckily been able to use a lot of that footage recently on my other show, on my show.
All right.
Which I'm sure we'll plug here in a little bit. But
absolutely, the Independent Rewind, if I'm correct.
Yes,
and you were
Shane
doing...
Shadows presents Classic Indies.
That is correct. Shane, and guys, if you're a fan of old school wrestling, please check out Shane's live stream and podcast. These are classic matches from like the mid '90s. Or early to mid '90s.
Early to mid '90s,
yeah.
A lot of it. Some of it's early 2000s. It's anything. Largely, what I did was I borrowed the collection that Neil had, that his mother had in her basement for 25 years since his passing. She never got rid of anything, and I had called her one day and said, "Hey, I got a couple. You want me to make you a small collection of Neil's matches? Because I had some stuff of my own." She said, "Oh, I got a whole bunch of tapes down here. I don't know how good they are because the basement's been flooded." Oh. But I end up getting like almost like 100 videotapes that I've come and I'm not a technology guy, so I've basically been burned them from VHS to DVD.
Oh yeah,
just so I could have the stuff, and some of it's of varying quality, but some of it was like the overseas Guam tours, but great stuff. But I mean, to get back to my point, we had a show like the first weekend I was involved in the business, and Tom Brandy was the headliner as he was working as Johnny Gunn.
Johnny Gunn.
Yeah.
You ever heard the Dusty Rhodes story with that, where he's coming up with the name?
Johnny Gunn.
Yeah, like Dusty Rhodes was like, "Well, when I see you, I see gangster written all over you, so we just gonna call you Johnny Shoot 'em up, motherfucking Gunn."
That's good.
Christian
stuff.
York was telling me that story once, and I cracked up laughing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah,
and I love Tom. Tom's a very good friend of mine. But he was on TV, and basically just working very, very underneath, second, third match type stuff for WCW. And he's the main event. And then we got a ladies match and this, that, and it was all just us wrestling school guys and Neil, and they had 600 people in the building. It used to be that you could just show up and do it like that.
Yep.
But by the point that I was coming, by the late 90s, it was, if you were just going to do it without the band boosters or some kind of group behind you, I mean, you were going to have to put in some serious work.
Yeah.
And you got to talk to the sponsors, and you got to get the building set up.
Now,
Luckily,
I will I don't mean to stop you, but a couple of years later, I know that changed a little bit, like with the popularity of business. Am I right there?
It got worse.
Oh, it got worse.
I think it got worse.
Wow.
I would say within the first, I'd say the first 5 years, the first 3 years were pretty solid, and then it got a little spotty for a couple years. And I think one of the things about independent promotions is that you have to be able to, and this is something that a lot of guys do wrong, in my opinion. You got to find a home base, and then you once you develop your home base, then you can do offshoots out of there. I think what happens with a lot of independents now, listen, everyone thinks they're a booker.
Yeah.
Everyone's or creative, or however you want to say it now.
It's true.
Everyone's a booker, and no one wants to be the guy pounding pavement. So everyone's going to be able to do it themselves. Everyone's going to be able to do it better than where they came from. And somehow or another, when no one shows up at these buildings and 25 people are there, well, shit, we're just going to move to another building. And then you go across town and you find another building and you do the same kind of stuff. You do it the same way. You don't have the discipline or take the effort to pound the pavement. It's the same thing. Well, let's go to another building. Let's go to the next town over and let's do the same thing. Completely the wrong way to go about doing it.
Yeah. Not to mention, there's a lot of guys, and I'll put myself in this category. A lot of guys, they will get stressed out with the aspect of how much money they're spending on an event. And I mean, this could be a nominal amount. It's just like I always had that head space where when there was money on the line, there was a lot more pressure on you to produce.
Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, because you're losing all. Like, it's not somebody else's money. It's not somebody else's money that's going to take the cushion along with you. It's just your money.
If you're promoting wrestling for any other purpose other than to try to make money, you're just an idiot.
Yeah.
You're a fool. You are a fool. I mean, I love it too. I don't love it like I used to because I don't, but that's a whole different topic for another day. And we only got so much time today. But yeah, I think that's what the mistake a lot of guys do. Instead of going out there and saying, listen, and they don't bring wrestling people. I'm sorry to say that they do not. They never put anybody in charge of the locker room, generally speaking, who knows what the hell they're talking about. And they let guys go out here and do whatever they want, and then there's, and you're getting blood on kids, and you're acting like fools, and you're like, this isn't how you draw a crowd. Wrestling inherently is violent, but there's a line between being sporting violent and just randomly violent.
Yeah, random acts like the deathmatch wrestling and
I mean,
I've never been a fan.
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to go out there. The idea is that you're in a competition, and one of the biggest parts of pro wrestling is going to be punches and kicks. If you go into that understanding good guy, bad guy, and there's going to be tensions and things are going to happen, but that's the excitement of it. You can probably kids are going once in a while. They'll get excited and they'll get wound up. But when you're out here and you're taking a hacksaw to a guy's head, or you're taking a weed whacker to a guy's nuts, and you're not drawing a family crowd. And when you're not drawing families at this level, you're not drawing.
Yeah. I mean, there's exceptions. There are exceptions. Like, I know Arizona area that's very successful in doing wrestling with pub crawls now. And I mean, not with COVID, but before COVID was very successful going around, and he would mask, it would be like he would mask the wrestling with the pub crawl. So the people would come in, they'd get drunk, they'd come watch wrestling. He'd make money. Everybody won, and I mean, they would travel the country doing this.
Yeah. Are you drawing people to see wrestling, or are you just drawing them to see like a circus sideshow or just a brawl? You know what I mean? I think they're different things.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a circus sideshow, because it's like all stuff like the wrestling at the pub crawls were like, it was like we did one in Baltimore, and all of the stuff is something that you would see on a family show too.
Okay.
It's just these people were there, they were drinking, they were having a good time, and then there was wrestling there, and they stuck around and they watched the wrestling the whole way through. I mean, I will say that there are exceptions to the rule. However, like with your point, I do agree that if you're not really and it took me a long time to learn this too. If you're not running a family show, like the chances of you drawing, unless you find a unique situation like that, they're astronomically low.
Yeah, you ideally you want kids to be running up to the storefront when they see a poster or whatever. Hey, Dad, there's wrestling.
Yeah. Because
kids usually don't get in without their parents. They don't come without their parents.
This is true.
And then their parents come. So that's why have you ever seen, and you do all kinds of different tricks and so forth trying to get people in. You've heard like kids get in for $5 or kids get in free or whatever. Have you ever seen adults get in free, kids, for $20? No. Because adults will bring their kids. The kids may want to go see it, but the adults will bring them to it.
Yeah, and especially if it's a cheap, affordable night of entertainment.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's changed a lot too. But I mean, at this level, cheap tickets and excitement are what you're selling.
Yeah,
it's got to be cheap tickets and excitement, and you should be trying to present a card that people want to see. And I mean, to get back to the first event part of this, as we're starting to spin around as we talk about all the different aspects. I was talking to Valentine, and he said, well, I said, you have anybody, can you suggest me anybody that you think would do good business with us? He said, well, what about Tito? And Tito Santana was obviously a top star too, and those two had a legendary feud for the Intercontinental title just a few years earlier. But that's what the independents really are.
Yeah,
the independents are the guys who are off TV, maybe a little past their prime, but still household names. This is what it was then.
Yeah.
guys who are still household names to wrestling fans who had enough television exposure over the years that, oh my goodness, look who's coming to town. This will be a good one. So that was my first main event.
So your first main event, right out of the gate, Tito Santana and Greg Valentine.
Yeah. And Rambo and Dick tried to counter it and ran a card in Boonesboro, Maryland, which is, the towns are about 20 or so miles apart.
Yeah, because you were in Martinsburg, am I correct?
Yeah, I was in Martinsburg.
Yeah, you were in Martinsburg. I want to say your first show, what was it, the Cadillac Club?
No, it was at the fairgrounds.
It was at the fairgrounds.
It was
So the Berkeley County Youth Fairgrounds.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes.
the big fairgrounds building.
Okay.
We did good.
You did good, but you still have that Boonesboro card countering you. It's like
I don't think they did very good.
You don't think they did very good?
Well, I mean, let's just be fair. If you're a wrestling fan, you can tell me what you think, and that's okay. It's your opinion. If you're a wrestling fan and you live in this same geographical area, and you are offered the opportunity to either see Greg Valentine and Tito Santana in the main event or John Rambo versus Disco Inferno, what are you buying tickets to see?
I don't think I've ever bought a ticket to see Disco Inferno, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on.
No, that's not a knock on Glenn at all. It's just,
Yeah.
it's but let's be honest. Like, I mean, at WCW, he was an undercard guy, and he got he got up to like maybe mid card level. I mean, but there wasn't anything like he wasn't a main event guy. Tito Santana and Greg Valentine, those are two names that made money. Intercontinental title, feuded over the Intercontinental title. That's a legendary wrestling feud.
Yeah.
I mean, even in '97, I'm going to see that one.
Yeah, and I think most of the people did.
Yeah.
I mean, later on, years later, I got a copy. Most of the guys who worked on that card, who were on Dick's card, who were of any notoriety, were never advertised because I don't know. You know Tom Casati?
I know
Tom Casati's a good guy.
He
I
is.
go way back, and he was like a wrestling agent / talent, a booker and so forth. He would bring a lot of guys to town, but he was like, hey, I'll get you a deal on Disco Inferno, but can you use Buddy Landell?
Oh.
Can you add this guy to the card? Can you add that guy to the card? So what you're really doing is just
So
you didn't advertise. They didn't advertise all these extra guys.
Yeah, so you mean to tell me, like, you have Disco Inferno on top of the card, and then you got Buddy Landell probably working the mid, and he's not even advertised?
Yeah, it happened a lot.
Wow.
It happened a lot, and it happened a lot even when I was with Dick, where Tom would say, hey, I brought this guy along, I brought the headbangers along. I was like, you got to understand, we got to pay these guys, and we didn't advertise them. So whatever cachet you may get from having these guys on the card, you don't really get it because now they're just on the card. No one knew they were there. You would have maybe sold some extra tickets if they did.
I've had that happen had that happen with my cards too. But to be fair, like it was usually somebody was riding along with somebody at the last minute. They're like, "Hey, can you throw me on? Just throw me gas money."
Sure.
And then it's just like, "Hey, surprise, man! I wish I could have advertised you because we would have drawn a couple of more tickets." But
we got independent wrestling inherently. Well, wrestling period, but independent wrestling in particular. There's going to be things that happen. You're going to have guys who aren't going to show up, and then you got too much, or you got too many, or you got too few, or you had this guy. You can plug a guy in here or there. I mean, it happens all the time. I couldn't count on two hands the number of times that I had guys who didn't come, and then it's like, here, you. I mean, I'm not talking just main events. I'm talking about anywhere in the card. Here, I'm short a guy. This guy got sick or whatever.
That's how that's how me and you started working. Yeah, that's how me and you started working together.
Really?
Yeah, I remember you booked Kid Rage for a you booked Kid Rage for a proving ground match, and I showed up with him because I was just like, look, I'm gonna go up. I've already I talked to Pat McNeil, I believe.
Yeah.
Over the internet.
My old partner.
Yeah, I talked to him, and he was just like, well, hey, I let him know. I was like, hey, I know you're using me next month, but I'm gonna be riding with Kid Rage this month. If you have something for me, great. If not, no big deal. And I showed up. You ended up having something for me, and I think I went and worked for you for probably 4 or 5 years after that.
Yeah.
Where Rage may have had another maybe 1 or 2 matches.
Yeah, Danny didn't last much longer. And another good guy, but it doesn't work out for everyone. I think that sometimes with this, you get into this thinking it's going to be something.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that you see that it's sometimes something else. I think it's hard for a lot of guys to accept that wrestling's an insecure business. I think that inherently there's going to be insecurities about anybody who has to go out in front of total strangers wrestling half naked to try to get approval. so the guys are naturally they get into it. They think they're going to be stars. They convince themselves they're going to be. And I'm not saying this about Danny. I'm just saying this has been general. That they think that they're going to be a bigger deal than what they are, and then they wrestle in their backyard, and they kind of get over a little bit maybe in one place, and then they got to go somewhere else. It's like one guy's stars, another guy's opener. Like, here, this is what I need you for. And I think some guys have a hard time dealing with that. I mean, they have a very hard time with the adjustment that you cannot automatically assume that everyone's going to see you in the same light that you see yourself.
Yeah, and with Danny there, I think his biggest problem, his biggest issue was just waiting around to wrestle. He's somebody that's got to be constantly stimulated, so to speak, and waiting around before a card to wrestle was his biggest thing, and he didn't like to travel. So
yeah, I can see that. You know what I don't like to do?
What's that?
I don't know if you know this or not. You might have picked up on this if you think about it after I say it.
Yeah.
I don't like to sit around all afternoon wearing my wrestling tights.
Yeah.
Or walking around all evening. It drives me nuts when I see guys walking around. They got dressed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for an 8 o'clock card, walking around wearing their belts and
Oh, if you're, I'll tell you this: if you're wearing a belt, I'm immediately judging you in the locker room.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's seriously, if I see somebody walking around wearing a belt,
grow up.
Yeah.
No,
that's
you're a grown man.
That's one thing I never understood, belt marks, because it's just man, you might have posed this question to me one time. I remember you asking me one time. You were like, what would you rather have, $20 extra in your paycheck or the heavyweight title?
Yeah,
and I was just like, man, I kind of like the money.
But most guys say that.
Yeah.
But in the moment they'll say that because they know that that's actually the right answer. And then there's that ego part of them that takes over. Like, man, I've been working hard. Can you give me a couple more bucks? You know what? I was just thinking, maybe it's time for you to be the heavyweight champion.
Yeah, I kind of like the
really.
Money. Yeah.
And people more guys get caught up in that. I don't like having conversations at that level.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all over the place here. We're just having fun here now. But when guys call me and are telling me all the championships and stuff, all the independent championships and stuff that they've held, I got to tell you, I'm not. Well, yeah. I'm not hearing what gets me.
No, I mean, if it was somebody, if it was someplace of value, because I do believe when somebody,
you wouldn't have to tell me if it was though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were ECW champion or WWE. You wouldn't have had to tell me that you did that.
Some of these guys you probably have to tell these days. I mean,
you wouldn't have to. It's like, I appreciate. We're glad to have you in. But when guys start telling me I was the champion of this company and I left over, I didn't like the creative of this stuff. I hate it when people try to sound smart. More than anything else, that's a pet peeve of mine. A lot of times people don't even. Guys who are really involved in wrestling only use certain words. They don't talk like that all the time. It's just when they need to in the moment. If I'm sitting there talking to Tom, Brandy, or Kalua, guys like that, we're not all just going to sit there and talk about marks this and blah, blah, gimmicks that. And gimmick's a word that old wrestlers use a lot. But, I mean, there's just a lot of – but when you try so hard to fit in, you're really not fitting in.
Yeah.
You're kind of casting a shadow on yourself that this kid's trying too hard to be part of something. Maybe he doesn't know.
Trying too hard to be one of the boys.
Yeah. He doesn't know what he's trying to convince me he knows. And that's okay because you got to start somewhere. I mean, I'm sure I came across like that too when I first broke in.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. So we're going back to this first event. It's Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, going against Disco Inferno and John Rambo. At the end of the day, you ended up kind of coming out on the winning end of the.
I did.
Yeah, you ended up coming out on the winning end of this, and after this first event, because I remember just for me, the first event I promoted was pretty successful. I remember the night that it happened, kind of going home and
I do too.
Yeah, I going home and I was just the first thought I had, I'm sitting with Mark Brown and my girlfriend at the time, and just holy shit, what the hell did we just do?
We're gonna conquer the world.
Oh, you feel like you're gonna conquer the world? Yeah, it didn't happen that way.
We're gonna get on TV. And we're gonna get on this.
We're gonna get on TV, Daddy. We're gonna, it's gonna be T-shirts,
we're gonna
posters.
Own it.
Like, yeah,
we own it. We already own it.
Yeah, we've
already shown everybody everything that they need to know, because the first one's easy. It's like I've heard different. I think it was Blackie. You familiar with the old heavy metal group Wasp?
A little bit. I've heard the name.
It might be a little bit before your time,
Probably.
but the lead singer was Blackie Lawless, and it's a great band from my era that I really like. But he did an interview where he says the first, talking about musical stuff, and it can equate, like the first album is the easy one. Your band's been together for a certain amount of time. You've wrote all these great songs. You're just now getting the opportunity to put them on the tracks and put them, you get it out there, and son of a bitch, if it doesn't, it kills.
Yeah.
It just kills, and everyone loves it. And now you're out on the road, and instead of playing in bars, you're in better places. But now you got to go back and do your second one.
And then you got to follow.
And now you're a little bit more fragmented. So now you got to follow how great that was. And the second one's like, okay, it ain't bad. It ain't the first one, but it ain't bad.
And you, like I always say this too, like you have that, like I use a baseball analogy with this. Like you have a baseball player that has this breakout season. I mean, it exceeds it exceeds everyone's expectations. A good player to mention on this, Brian Roberts, if you remember Brian Roberts.
Of course
he had that breakout season in 2005, and then he had to follow that up the next year. And the only place to go is down.
Right.
At that point.
Sophomore jinx.
Yep.
And then you start losing members of your band, the guys who helped put it together, the guys who helped make it good. And now you got to go back in all that. Not only in all that, your stages went from this big, and now it's this big, and now it's this big. But you're losing members who made the band good, and you're losing the artistic abilities that you had. And now the third album's out, and the songs aren't quite as good. And now you got a replacement bass player. It's not the same thing. You lose something in that. Yeah. So, I mean, and we absolutely did the same thing, because we lost a little bit of momentum because it was 4 months from our first event to our second one, and it wasn't in the same town. And again,
and that's got to hurt you too, because a lot of people don't understand consistency in wrestling is a big thing.
Establish your place.
Yeah, going from Martinsburg, and what was the next town you did?
Next town was Petersburg at the fairgrounds.
So you're going from Martinsburg to Petersburg. You're kind of losing that consistency a little bit on your second show.
I'm further out, further away. I can't maintain it on a daily or a weekly basis where I'm checking in with everything, because it's further down the road. That was before they built that access road down there through too. That used to be very difficult to drive down through there. They kind of cut through the mountains a little bit and made it better the last 10, 12 years. But back then, it was hard to get to. So now you're further away, and crowd's half the size. Like you're not, you got to have your hands in this stuff.
Yeah.
Unless you have like a local guy, like it's easier for like WWE and so forth, because they really don't do all this stuff themselves. They have local event promoters. When you're a small-time independent guy, you are the local promoter.
Basically, like when big time wrestling comes to town, like that guy's got the perfect setup, because he'll have like local independent guys promote his shows when he comes in every 6 months, and he doesn't he does work, like he does a lot of online promotion, with like mailing lists and stuff, and it's very successful. However, without those local guys in those towns consistently every month, it doesn't work.
Sure, you have to, and again, you go from one thing to the other. The first time through, you got this guy on the card and that guy on the card, and now every time through, you lose a little bit.
Yeah,
it's that same analogy that I was just talking about. It's like, you had, oh my goodness, big time wrestling with the Outsiders and the Patriot, and we're gonna have Kane make an appearance, and then the second time they come back, I mean, you got about half that star power. Now we're using guys who were like low card, mid card guys, formerly known as guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of that.
You lose your house, you lose your. Because it's not big time wrestling's guys that are selling the tickets. No. It's absolutely not. My guess is that's most of the guys who work the undercards are either locals or guys. There's probably 5 or 6 guys that big time puts out there. Those are their guys, and they go out there and work most of the stars. If the stars work, a lot of the guys that they book, it seems to me, don't even work matches. They just do appearances.
Yeah, you'll have that from time to time. Like like your guys like Hall and Nash, they're not wrestling anymore.
Yeah,
they're making appearances, and they do very, very well.
That's something that's really changed over my lifetime experience of promoting wrestling. You didn't book guys back then just to show up and sign stuff.
Yeah,
it just didn't happen.
Well, yeah, I mean it's totally different now because I feel like the independent wrestling shows, when you're bringing in names, it's like they're running them like conventions at this point.
Yeah,
they're running them like conventions. Like you have the convention beforehand where people pay the admission to the card, and then they get the convention. They pay the admission to meet their whatever star they want to meet, and then they're getting to enjoy the card, and you're doubling up on your money. It's like almost like running the quarterback and a running back from the same team in fantasy football. Like it makes sense. It makes everybody money. But 97, that was unheard of. Like
different time.
You wanted a guy that could go. You know?
If you can't get in the ring and do something, that's what good are you going to do?
Yeah,
that was the mindset. I still just don't really book anybody to this day who are just going to sit at ringside and sell pictures. I different mindsets.
Oh,
different
absolutely.
Mindsets. It works differently for different people, but I'm not going to pay a guy $1,000, because sit and do nothing.
Trust me, I question it sometimes. I mean, that's a lot of money, man. It
doesn't work for me. There was a point in time that I had to kind of alter the way I looked at it. Instead of making it the former WWE Guy of the Month club, I had to use my two different things. One was use my matchmaking ability to try to create scenarios, get centralized in a building, create scenarios that I could keep people coming back every month. Yeah, so just to stabilize what I was doing and try to bring in guys as attractions. Because when it just becomes, hey, this month we got this guy, people are either gonna love it or they're gonna fart at it.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out a way to make it interesting on your own, using your own talent and your own ability without having that extra nut, you can find yourself being profitable almost instantly.
Absolutely. And I remember when I first started working for you, one of the big things you were doing to develop and kind of push your own talent, you were kind of ahead of your time, which for an old school guy like yourself, you were really ahead of your time in 2004, 2005 with CPW Showdown. You had an internet-based television show that you were running. I want to say it was every other week through MPEG Nation at the time, but this was before YouTube.
Well, I'd like to take credit for that, but I can't. That was Patrick.
Yeah,
Patrick did all that.
Well,
I booked it. I mean, our general arrangement through the years. I started CPW on my own, and then 2 or 3 years in, him and I became partners, and then later on we cut in. Buddha got involved in it because he was just so local over there in that area. But that's probably some of that stuff's gonna have to be for a different day.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
He handled a lot of that. Once we figured out that we could try to use that as a vehicle. You're right, it was ahead of its time. Every couple of weeks he put in the graphics, and his friend Brian Frank, who wrestled for us also, as Brian Johnson. Yep. They did a lot of the video work and did the editing and did the commentary, and I largely booked.
I got to credit Brian Johnson for me continuing my television career after leaving NBC 25.
Okay.
So when I left NBC 25, Brian Johnson was working for you guys, and he had suggested to me going down and working for this television station in Rockville called Montgomery Community Television. If it had not been for that conversation at CPW, a lot of my involvement in wrestling after that wouldn't have happened because I was able to start Fight and produce a television show for them based on the people that I met working for Montgomery Community Television. Right. So Brian Johnson, he was responsible for all of that.
They did a lot of they did all of that.
Yeah.
The only thing that I ever did was I booked all we did was just record matches live and did promos in the locker rooms. So it's like we ordinarily weren't broadcasting that's that old school mentality that you're not broadcasting your main matches. You're broadcasting things and trying to put in clips of what this is what happened last time at the Fire Hall in Kaiser, and we're going to be in Romney this Saturday night with the big show, and then to build into those matches.
Yeah, and that goes back to all that older like the stuff you were talking about earlier with just paying attention to all the little nuances and things. I mean, I'm assuming you've never booked television before.
No.
Before
Well,
that, and
no.
honestly, from a fan standpoint, looking back on it, the television show was very well produced and very well booked because it was designed to drive people to the towns.
Yeah, we are trying to get people in small towns to see something that I think that people in small towns tend to believe that television is a bigger medium than maybe people who live in bigger towns.
Yeah.
Even though obviously the television penetration in New York City is far wider than anything that we're going to be able to do in Hagerstown, Maryland or whatever, people in if people think in a small town that there's something bigger that's happening right there in their town, in their area, and they can't miss it, I think it means more. Like New York, they're like, Jesus, everything comes to town here. Yeah. Everything plays the Garden here. Everything's at the such and such. And there's like that certain cynical, disaffected kind of mentality. But it's like, oh, these guys are on TV or these guys are on the internet, and this is neat. You can go and find this. And, it gave people a reason, I guess. And I mean, and it in some ways it did help boost some things up a little bit at that point, I would say. But we were about 2 or 3 weeks behind on everything. Again, it's not. This still wasn't the instantaneous
running on the bicycle.
The instantaneous. Here, let's hold our phone up and record all this stuff and put it out here, and the whole world can see it as it happens or within a couple minutes. This was still. We're here on Saturday night, January the 10th. We're going to cut and edit these matches out so they play on February the 8th, so we can publicize our next event in the area on March the 1st.
Yeah.
That's, bicycle, as they used to call it,
Yep, running on the bicycle. I remember distinctly, and, here's another, this is another significant day as far as, what led me to promoting shows, but I was up in Edison, New Jersey. I ended up meeting a bunch of talent that I would end up using on that very first show that I ran, but I remember being in the crowd and these kids were like staring over at us, and me and Mark Brown were like, "What are they looking at?" And I heard the one kid say, "Oh, those guys wrestle on that CPW show that we watch on Saturdays." This was in New Jersey.
Yeah, that's neat.
So it's kind of like I think I called you up afterwards. I was like, "Man, that just blew my mind," because this was before YouTube. Like I think YouTube wasn't a big thing until the next year after that.
Yeah,
and.
You had to go find this thing.
Yeah, I mean, you really did. You had to go find it. So the fact that people were finding it on the internet was just crazy to me, just to say the least, at that point in time. But had that show, I would even say, had that show been on YouTube, and this would have been 3 years later, I think you guys would have had something pretty special.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been a different thing. I mean, everything's always timing. But but I guess my thought was never that big. I mean that was Patrick's thing because he understood it, and him and Brian shared a place at the time, and Brian had worked in that field. I understood that what the value of it could be. I didn't. The internet was getting big, but wasn't quite as big, and obviously the YouTubes and all these different channels now didn't exist then. So it was just, to me, let's just try to use this as a means to an end. My goal when I first started this CPW was that I wanted to have a territory that ran, for lack of a better way of putting it, territory that ran from Harrisburg to Harrisonburg.
Okay.
That was my hope, was to be able to come up with about 5 or 6 solid regular towns and 2 or 3 decent television outlets, because from that space of the country, you don't really, you wouldn't need a lot of outlets.
No, you wouldn't.
Harrisburg had one. We had one here. Harrisburg had one. Harrisonburg has one.
And Chambersburg.
Chambersburg had a TV station too.
Yeah, they had one for a bit.
Yeah. So my thought was, if I could get these situated here, and I would go as far over as Petersburg, West Virginia, and kind of cut back down over. And that was all I wanted to do. But I didn't have the technology and the ability to understand how that worked, And we certainly didn't have a budget to do to do that by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, nowadays people are paying for the content again.
Oh
yeah. I mean, it's more like the late '70s, early '80s, where people there are companies out there that would pay you to produce this content for them now.
Yeah.
But in the mid 2000s, in the mid 2000s or even the late '90s. If you wanted your content on TV, it was like, hey, well, how much money are you going to pay me to air your content?
Sure,
because
everybody wanted money, and if you want to reach anybody, you got to be on a decent station. It's hard to be on public access and really reach the people that you need to reach.
Yeah, unless you're in a major city.
Oh yeah, and clearly,
I mean, even then, I was in D.C. I was in 275,000 homes in D.C. and we even there we had trouble drawing people into the studio.
Fingernails.
Yeah, we had trouble drawing people into the studio. We had trouble finding buildings because wrestling wasn't it wasn't the
they don't want it.
No, well, not in Montgomery County. It's like that's beneath them. How dare you guys?
Oh yeah, the richest county in the country.
No,
yeah,
the elitist.
We're gonna do what?
Yeah,
and it's even hard around. It's even hard around here because everyone's afraid of the liabilities.
Yeah,
we got such a lawsuit happy society now. Everyone's afraid that they're going to fall down, crack a head, and someone's going to sue them because and the courts back guys up like this up. Well, I didn't know that I was going to fall and hit my head, and it didn't happen in his building. It didn't matter that they jumped off the top rope and did 3 flips and smashed their head. They made their own choice.
It gets a little easier, I will say, if you prove that you can bring money and give them a return on the investment or the risk for running in their building. I will say,
sure,
but it's still incredibly difficult. I talk about it all the time, like the difficulties of running wrestling in Hagerstown. Even though the last 4 years, it's been a proven significant money draw here in town. And it's still difficult to get your shows in buildings because
people look down their nose at it still.
Yeah. Oh, they still do. Yeah,
they still think it's the circus, and I preferred the circus style of wrestling better than the current style of wrestling. But a lot of people I don't understand what it is about people that makes them feel like pro wrestling is so far beneath them because, well, the first thing they want to say is about it's this or it's that. It's not real. Okay, so what you're going to the movies on Saturday night, and everything Tom Cruise did was actually happened to Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
I mean everything that the Vin Diesel or whoever, whatever actor, whatever movie you're watching, does this really happened? I mean, they really ran a race car off the top of a building at 198 miles per hour and then landed and didn't kill themselves. Yeah. Our job is supposed to be to make people who are interested believe what we're doing. Not so much in the sense anymore that we're really doing it. Yeah. But that moment, that TV show or movie mentality, it's like I've tuned in to watch this show, and it's got me by the balls. I'm so excited about this. I want to see this guy fights this guy because he did this to him or that happened. Yeah. And what's wrong with that?
And the people that lose out on this to this mentality are the fans because
sure.
you know as well as I do, there are a lot of wrestling fans in this area.
There are.
It still amazes me how many wrestling fans there are in the 4-state region.
There's a lot of wrestling fans, but it's I think that as time has worn on, the internet to me has ruined a lot of the illusion.
Yeah.
Now everyone's an expert now. Everyone's writing a column. I read some of this stuff that are alleged stories and stuff I pick it up online or on Facebook. It's this stuff's written by like 8th graders. Yeah. These aren't stories. This is not. I mean, the writing's terrible, and you're not. Wrestling used to have a mystery around it. It was never intended to be mainstream. Yeah. It is what it is now, and they're one company is very successful, and a startup company is moderately successful, and everybody else is hanging on by the skin of their teeth to some variety, and because this was never intended to be network.
No, this was
entertainment. It was just not supposed to be a corporate thing. These guys didn't fit. I knew Jimmy Snuka. Can you imagine Jimmy Snuka wearing a suit at a corporate meeting, making appearances on television, talking about the Superfly character? No, he was Jimmy Snuka. That's just who he was.
I mean, I mean, granted, if you look at not to bring up anything, but if you look into his past, it's kind of amazing that that kind of happened.
That was the whole business, and there's good and there's bad to that. But as a performing aspect, I think it was better that there was some mystery to it. I mean, a lot of guys were not good guys. I mean, a lot of these guys would have been in jail if they hadn't had the wrestling business. They were carnies, they were con men. Yeah. And I'm not. I'm not trying to say that glowingly. It's just they lived in their own world, and they were not they weren't trying to appeal to anybody who didn't want to see it.
No, they were men that were trying to make money to feed their families.
Yeah, they were making
whatever
Yeah, they were making a good living and working for sometimes promoters they could trust very well, and sometimes with promoters they couldn't trust at all. But it was never intended to be anything but its own world. I think that's what wrestling has lost. Again, that's not what we're just talking about everything here now.
Yeah, no.
I think that's what wrestling's lost.
Yeah.
Wrestling's lost that interesting, this guy is, he's the Japanese barefoot bad guy who throws salt, and there's the Indian chief, and then there's the Russians. It's lost all that. I think I think that the people who watch it now are a lot of them are more interested in trying to sound like they really know what the hell they're talking about as far as how it's put together, and less likely to just enjoy it and go along for the ride. Oh, check it out. There's Strongbow, and he's going up against Professor Toru Tanaka or Mr. Fuji, and now it's become like an entertainment, like a Cirque du Soleil type flip thing. But the personalities are not. They're not as generalized.
I am in agreement, and 3 years ago, if you would have asked me that, I wouldn't have been. But like now, seeing, I don't know. The last 3 years has tested me as a fan of.
I don't watch it anymore.
I can't watch WWF.
I mean, I try. So. I'd like to. I turn on Impact once in a while because Drew's on there, and he's a friend of mine. But,
Impact and AEW is basically what.
I can't even watch that.
Yeah,
I can't watch that. I mean, I could probably get past the flips and all the stuff because that's part doesn't really bother me because there's always been spectacular stuff. It's just it becomes the level of difficulty becomes different as generations move on.
Yeah,
it went from being a guy coming off the top of the press and now it's
I know.
I don't like. I like it to kind of seem like it's a contest. If you take me out of the contest aspects of it, I can't really enjoy it. And I hate promos that people are just that are all just about getting across buzzwords and. Trying to cater to people who don't like wrestling are never going to like wrestling. You're never going to be able to convince them to like wrestling. So why do we spend so much damn time trying to get people to watch wrestling who aren't going to watch it anyway?
Yeah.
Constantly with the pop culture references and appearances by this guy, this rapper, and stuff like that. I mean, make it count.
Of all people, this week, Vince Russo had the line of the week on this, and that was, you can put Bad Bunny and Bow Wow on TV all you want, but once a casual wrestling fan sees the show that you're putting on, they're not going to tune back into a shitty TV show.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
And the guy who wrote more shitty TV shows than almost anybody, but the last couple years have tested that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna kid you. I'm not a fan of his at all, but.
He had a good run. He had 2 or 3 years where he was the golden goose. But I mean, after that,
I think I think anybody can contribute good ideas if you got someone who is smart enough to know how to select those ideas. But if you're just that idea guy who just gets to do whatever you want, then that ends up always being a problem.
No, I agree. I agree. But. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time that we have today. We got to have you back on the show.
I want to come back. Yeah, absolutely. I'm out of time today,
back.
too, but I want to come back. This has been fun. There's so much more stuff we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Shane Shadows, ladies and gentlemen, of CPW Wrestling, thank him for coming into the studio today. I thank you. The podcast pit thanks you. And back to everyone in the studio.
See you in part 2.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was our interview with Shane Shadows. We hope you enjoyed it. He's going to be back here sooner rather than later. Up next week, though, we're going to have Ed Stilk back in the studio here, and we're going to be talking the history of wrestling here in the Baltimore, Washington area. We're even going to have some history about Hagerstown wrestling as far as the old days, the WWF days, as they say. We hope you tune in next week for the podcast pit. Same podcast time, same podcast channel. For my co-host, who is not with me right now, Rennis Carball, I am Mike Raddick. We will see you next week.
This is the podcast pit, brought to you by Ben Media.